listening to Awake Radio. Straight talk for the awake and aware.
Hi, and welcome to Locals Supporting Locals, the Heartbeat of the Okanagan radio show. I am your host, Kevin Proteau, and I have with me my lovely co-host, Dee Nicholson. How are you, Dee?
I'm well, and how are you?
I am fantastic. We have a very interesting show that correlates with a lot of what Locals Supporting Locals has been doing since its inception here. Tonight's topic is your community ready for any crisis? And we have a very special guest, John Papadakis, who is located in Ontario here and is running for council. Just to give a little bit of his background here, his bio, he's a national instructor, certified community emergency response teams, provincial instructor for basic emergency management, Ontario, certificate for basic emergency management region of Niagara, accredited radiological defense officer, Canadian Emergency Preparedness College Department of National Defense, certification for various courses, Canadian Emergency Preparedness College, including plans of operations, peace and plans of operations, war, emergency Operations Center, and the list just goes on. He's also the founder of the Canadian Emergency Preparedness Association, CEPA. It is a registered charity, and this is something that we have been promoting with Locals Supporting Locals, like we were saying here, since its inception, is that we need to form a local network within our community for whatever reasons that may be, whether it be in the event of a catastrophe, disasters, or even in the event of a disaster that may cut off our food supplies. There's so many reasons why we need to have a local network here. And so the goal of Locals Supporting Locals, reading right off our website here, which you can visit at localsupportinglocals.ca, is to form a network that connects the people in our local communities, local businesses, local citizens, and local farmers. We at Locals would like to form a network that spreads across our province and our country in North America. We would like to hold community meetings to keep everyone informed on current events and issues that affect us all. When we have a connection between all in the community, we can make informed decisions. So I welcome to the show, John Papadakis. How are you?
Good, what should I say? Good afternoon, I guess.
Depending where we are.
Yeah, I guess that's right. Hello, good. George Norrie would say good morning, good evening, good afternoon.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate this opportunity, and of course, also always enjoy going on the radio with my good friend Dee Nicholson, who's very active in this sort of thing. And I'm also glad that you've decided to address a very serious issue. In Canada, we are so not prepared for disasters. It is gone beyond funny into the serious. We saw that recently here in Toronto with the ice storms during Christmas, and I'm pretty sure Dee can attest to her own horror stories.
You don't want to ask me about those, John.
Exactly. But what it also showed is one of the things, and I'll get into it a little later, is the different government agencies talk about having an emergency kit for 72 hours. I've always said at least a week or more if possible. The ice storm went way beyond 72 hours, and if it went much further, things would have been very, very ugly here. The important thing is for the people and the community as an individual and as a whole to not only learn what to do, but to empower themselves to go through the stages of what to do in mitigation, preparation, response, recovery. And believe me, it makes big, big difference because when it hits, and it's not an if anymore, it's a when, it's not pretty. Ask a lot of people who lived on the 12th and 15th floor of apartment buildings with no hydro for over a week how ugly that can get.
Yeah. That was lots of fun. There were so many people stranded in their apartments with no light, no heat, and it's like minus 15 degrees, and people literally huddling in corners for safety. And after the fact, the city of Toronto says, "Oh well, we're opening up warming centers." Great. Now you got all these people having to go down 17 floors of stairs, and they can't get back up. So it just got ridiculous real quick, as we all saw. And then, of course, you've got all these other disasters, and most notable, especially to do with the heart of the Okanagan this past week, has been the forest fires that are going on in the mountains behind Kelowna. And I noticed, John, this is a real good one for you. I noticed that on the CBC online forum, after the fact, 3 days into an evacuation, they finally post what to do in an evacuation. And it's this little video hosted by the BC Emergency Management Agency. What a laugh. Why don't you tell after the horse has been stolen that you should now lock the barn?
Well, you see, here's a problem. And it's not just government to blame. It's everybody to blame. Now, our present emergency management system is remnants of the Cold War, where it was a hierarchy, top-down command system. Things have changed since then. What we've discovered, and you just said it, you have fires in the Okanagan, you have flooding in Calgary, you have ice storms in Toronto. So what SEPA is doing and trying to educate the communities and the individuals, and through an organization called CERT, which is the actual empowerment of the community emergency response teams, is that we get together with the individuals and the community and we assess things. It's called HIRA, Hazard Identification Risk Assessment. What's the danger in your community? What's the problems? Can you have floods? Can you have ice storms? Can you have fires? Can you have earthquakes? Do you have nuclear reactors nearby? So once you assess what the dangers are, then you do mitigation. You try to mitigate disasters from happening. Like in Calgary, they're going to be digging even more runoff canals. In Toronto, sooner or later, we'll be building enough storm sewers so that when we get those torrential downpours, we don't get flooding as we do now constantly. So that's mitigation. And then when a disaster strikes, the community knows what to do through CERT teams and through education. You respond. Because remember, too, first responders are not designed to be out there for long periods of time. It's burn fast and burn bright, but not very long. So this is where these organizations like CERT kicks in. We respond, we assist, and we maintain.
Yes, and not only that, let me jump in with one more fact here. They also do triage on communities. So first responders, you may not be the first community that the first responders get to. They're going to do triage on the individual communities. So parts of Toronto, for example, during that ice storm and during subsequent power outages that we have had here, certain communities are on a low priority list. And if you're on a low priority list, you better know what the hell to do, because if you don't, there ain't going to be nobody coming to help you for a while.
That's exactly true. And and when you confront government with this, they kind of try and dodge the bullet and start whistling Dixie. And I think people need to confront government because they don't spend the money. In Ontario here, we approached them to work together with CERT teams. I found out they were spending $1 million a year and have nothing except a big bloated administration to show for it. So you got to take power and you got to control your own community.
Well, it's something that we've been doing very avidly with supporting locals here in the Okanagan, and through the calendar that we publish. Going to the farms, going to the businesses, and going to the local community here through a door-to-door campaign with the calendars. We formed a network, and we actually meet with farmers, engineers, very like-minded, like-hearted people that see the issues at hand, and we discuss solutions. And one of the biggest topics is Where do we go? What do we got? What do we do in the event of? And like you said, it's just a matter of when. And this is something that people need to start doing in their communities. And we always welcome that for people to start a chapter of locals, supporting locals where they are. It doesn't matter where you are on the globe, but these are all things that we need to do. So I just wanted to share that there.
Absolutely, and wonderful. And our charity is a Canadian registered charity, but we are a Canadian-based international charity, so we can go anywhere in the world. And by doing it this way, we now have some empowerment ourselves, because now we can raise funds, we can produce literature, we can produce programming. Our different chapters, we wish them to be fully stocked so that in the event of a disaster, they're deployed. Our CERT program, for example, is amazing. We adapted it. I have to be honest with you, I was so frustrated with our Canadian governments that I actually went to the Americans when I heard about this program. It was developed by the Los Angeles Fire Department, and FEMA adopted it. It is absolutely a brilliant program, and it's amazing. You learn so many things as a CERT team, and you get extensive training. Of course, I am an instructor, but what we've done here in Ontario and in Canada, at least Ontario, I've added another prerequisite called Basic Emergency Management. And this is basically an introduction course, which is a prerequisite in Ontario if you intend on doing anything in the field, which, by the way, emergency management is one of the fastest growing professions in the field, which job-wise is great, but it kind of, the old Han Solo, I got a bad feeling about this. And let me just tell you how serious this program, okay? Let me just list to you guys the training sessions. The first session is disaster preparedness. It addresses hazards to which people are vulnerable in the community, etc. The second session, disaster fire suppression. For example, and this is what I'm actually discussing this with Greece and some other Mediterranean countries. A lot of times when you get flash fires, the appropriate responders are way too far. This thing grows and grows and grows. If you've got trained CERT teams out in those remote areas, in those communities, they can respond real fast, and what's a little fire and easy to handle with stays that way. Okay? Disaster medical operations. We train people to do basic things like airway obstruction, bleeding, shock, triage, rapid treatment techniques. And then the second part, it gets into bigger things like doing head-to-toe assessment, establishing medical treatment areas, basic first aid, practicing safe and sanitary. Basically, you're doing triage. Session 5, light search and rescue operations. We teach people how to do rescue planning, sizing of search techniques, rescue techniques, and more important, rescuer safety, because you've got to protect yourself, because if you don't look after yourself, you're no good to anyone. Section 6, disaster psychology and team organization. Another thing that people don't realize is in a disaster, you got that initial shock calm, okay? And then people respond. Actually, people are really good during a disaster. What happens is post-traumatic stress kicks in after a little while. So you kind of have to have a way of learning and to see the signs and symptoms by not just the victims, but also the responders and the workers. And we provide some principles in how to address that. Session, I believe it's session 7. We review the course and we do a simulation. And then you write an exam, and if you pass, then you get a recognized certification, you get a uniform, and you get more and more training, and you get more involvement in the community as well, and it's some recognition, and you're doing something good for the community. We also have a teen or youth CERT program, which in Ontario qualifies for the 40-hour volunteer prerequisite of high school students, as well as other community volunteers. So the most important of all is this. It empowers communities to look after themselves. Just like in the days of old, we've gotten lazy in cities. Communities banded together, looked after each other in time of crisis and needs. We need to get back to that because your government cannot do it.
Yeah, I think we've basically done a good job of establishing that fact, John, through locals. Because essentially what people are learning here is that if we do not band together, if we do not circle the wagons, if we don't know what the hell we are doing, things are going to get worse, and they're going to get incrementally worse in one hell of a hurry. So
well, yeah, exactly.
It's a matter of survival, and you haven't got the opportunity to mess around and learn stuff after the fact.
Exactly, and you know, I mean, if I asked any people out there, how many people right now, never mind have an emergency kit, know what it's comprised of? I don't think there's too many. Very little. And yet, when it hits, it may depend on your survival, may depend on it. Absolutely. You know, and I mean, simple things like, if I may, okay, a basic emergency kit, water, 2 liters of water per person per day. Food. Unfortunately, this is where junk food actually comes in handy, but food that won't spoil, food that can be preserved, canned food, energy bar, dried food, ridiculously enough as it seems, sugar and stuff like that. And no, you should not have an electric can opener. You should have a manual one. You'd be surprised. Flashlights and batteries, battery-powered or wind-up radio, extra batteries, a basic first aid kit, special needs. I mean, you know, what people don't think about is this. If there's a disaster and we have lights out or evac, what about medication, prescriptions? What about infant formula? We even now have, finally the Ontario government realized that there needs to be something done, because we were pushing this and even DRE members. I said, there's nothing here to address emergency management and preparedness and response with people with disabilities.
Yeah, you left one out, John. Toilet paper!
Well, yeah, you're right, actually, and it is on the list. I haven't got to it yet.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, very big on the toilet paper, or, you know, Toronto Star past issues, whatever, right?
Well, just
Sorry?
Well, just to throw this in here, like when we have our meetings, and we have them at generally at farms, because we like to be somewhat off the grid a little bit and in touch with nature here, but you know, something that people can do at the same time is you know, connect with your farmers if you can, depending where you're located. But I mean, you can always improvise on this too. But here in our Okanagan, like when we meet on a farmland here, what we're going to start doing is actually having, you know, how to can and how to preserve. But at the same token, you have to talk about what, you know, in the event of how much do we got, how many people can we feed, and how do we continue on in the event if we don't have electricity, we don't have the water, what do we do? And these are things that people should start doing in their communities. It doesn't matter if you're in the big city. There is an advantage to being in the Okanagan or in farm country, but these are things, you know, like teach each other the different skills that you have and what you bring to the table. It's very, very, very important.
Well, also learn to adapt to the changes in your environment. For example, in Toronto, should I succeed in getting elected, I intend to introduce legislation making it mandatory for solar panels to be put up on new housing and commercial developments, and then implementing a retroactive program with federal provincial funding to install solar paneling all over the place. The technology is much better, it works a lot better, and it does a couple of things. Reduces power usage on the grid, which prevents incompetent provincial governments from charging way too much, and it empowers the community, so when we do have the failures, that extra energy now is going directly to your feed. So things like that. I mean, in farms, it's wonderful because you've got room to work with. You know, and you're right. Think about all of these things. And because we have internet and other social medias now, it's very easy to learn, okay? Because when the disaster strikes, notice I don't say if, I say when. I mean, you know, we have to be like harsh but truthful here. You have no one but yourself to blame with. And it's going to be, I mean, sure, there's community support in that, but there's going to come a point where if you don't have it and they can't spare it, you're done for. So it's proactive preparedness.
Well, you know what? It's the 7 P's in life, and I learned this when I was I did door-to-door sales for 7 years in management, and I truly appreciate these skills because they taught you the true sense of selling here, and it's in every self-help book. But it's the 7 P's in life: proper, prior, planning, prevents, pitiful, poor performance. Say that 10 times fast.
No kidding. Rubber baby buggy bumpers. Rubber baby buggy bumpers.
Well, it comes down to a simple thing as this, and Dee knows this story, but I was in Niagara and Fort Erie for a while, and we had one of those freak lake effect storms where it's, you're in shorts one minute, and next minute you're in 6 feet of snow. And massive, power failures, down trees, power lines. You go 10 kilometers west, and it's fall, right? But they had a problem with communications, and they're going back and forth trying to figure out how to do communications. And I said, well, being a rural area, you all got CB radios in the trucks, don't you? Yeah. I go, there's your communications. It's simple things like that.
Well, what we're trying to get actually to everyone that's joining us in our network is to have two-way radios.
Absolutely.
Yeah, big time.
Well, the other thing you can do.
I just want to say one thing. I just want to say one thing here, John. There, in addition to those solar panels, like you were speaking of, one thing that doesn't get promoted enough, and it's understandable why. I mean, there's no money in it, but our gasification units. And we have some brilliant people here. I mean, I can't begin to tell you, John, how many incredible people I have met throughout my walk of putting together these calendars that I do. And gasification units are just used with wood pellets, with wood. And it turns out you can actually get enough electricity to power a farm, a house, and also if it's done in the right way, you can actually produce your own fuel, so you can still fuel your tractors and everything else. I mean, again, these are technologies that they don't want to let get out there because there's no revenue in it.
Well, I agree, and it's got. I mean, one of the things I got to tell you that I'll be talking about for alternative energy sources and situations like this with the city of Toronto is looking into what we call, I'm sure you know about it, magnetic motors.
Yeah.
I think it's a viable technology, and it could fill in nicely. I mean, I don't think it'll replace generation, but it's safe, it's easy, and if you need anything in the spur of the moment, you fire these babies up, and away you go. But the point is...
And let me just ask you one thing, John. I already know the answer. But exactly what level of cooperation are the producers of these brilliant means of protecting us getting from our government levels?
Next to none.
Yeah, I'm thinking of True North Power. I'm thinking of Dave Cook at True North Power and how the government treated him. And you've got all kinds of energy ideas. As you said, there are, gas-free motors. There are, solar generations, wind generation, what's it called? The earth power generations, all this, and everything is being suppressed.
Well, this is why, again, and you know that one of my platforms is to take control of hydro and electrify the city. And it's come down to the point where you want to run the city like a business? Okay, well, high hydro rates are bad business, and I'm going to deal with it. And if the provincial government doesn't like it, time to change the deal. Because, again, one of the other disasters that nobody's talking about, and it is my thesis, if I ever get a chance to get back into university, is electromagnetic pulses. Some governments around the world and some cities are starting to take it seriously, and I just pray we don't have the same thing happen to us as it happened, I believe it was September 13th, 1859. It was such a massive pulse that it fried the telegraph cable and actually affected life on Earth. That's how powerful it was. If that happens today, it will basically knock us into the 15th century because transformers are big, bulky, ugly, I believe, primitive technology, and we can only produce at most 2 a month. In North America alone, there are thousands of them. It would be half a decade before we got the grid back up again.
Yeah, well, one blew up, as you know, John, one blew up in front of my house a couple of years ago, and it took them 4 days to replace it. Even though they had a replacement transformer ready to go, they had to let the damn thing burn out. And it took, because they're full of oil, they burn at a very dangerous toxic oil, which then drips down the outside of the container and lands on the ground. It took them, with the fire department and hydro, it took them 4 days to get it cool enough so that they could actually put a new one in place. And you can imagine
the one. Yeah, imagine the ones
that they have one. Yeah, and that's if they have one.
Yeah, so you will not have the grid back up for months, maybe years.
Oh, yeah, they're saying one EMP pulse is good enough to knock out our power system literally for years. And what would we do? Oh, my heavens, our iPads would go down. Oh, what will we do?
Hey, I remember the dial phone.
It gets you into the whole Wi-Fi smart meter grid that we're in. Like, it's just so retarded how we're all hooked onto that one system with the smart grid, which it doesn't even need a disaster for that. It just needs a virus or somebody to hack into it, and it can shut down the whole system.
Yeah, not very smart, is it?
No, today's smart is dumb and green is black.
This is the other thing, and again, through emergency management and preparedness. I mean, yeah, what happens if somebody messes up, or somebody that really has no life decides to enter a virus and mess up our traffic signal grid? That alone, I propose that. I threw that out there. Go, do you guys start to see how easy it is how on such a thin wire we exist on this? Imagine the traffic lights going out all over a major metropolitan city. I mean, most people.
You know what? There's a new show coming out. I believe it's on either TNT or USA in the States, called Scorpion. Okay, and it's about a group of people who have the highest IQs possible, and they're all gathered together into one super intelligence team. It's supposed to be a good show, but at any rate, the line that they're using to promote it, you will so appreciate, okay, just on what you just said right now. The little clip from the show shows an outraged official saying, "You're committing an offense by hacking into our system." And the guy says, "So why'd you make it so easy?"
Exactly. Exactly.
That's precisely the point. It's so easy that, I mean, I have watched a 13-year-old hacker sitting in England hack into major computer systems while a guy sitting in Toronto gave him directions on what to do. The hacker, the head hacker's name was Mama Bird, and these were all kids in the nest, right? He had a nest of hackers all over the world, and all he had to do was make a phone call or send an email, and boom, the hack was done. And this was years and years and years ago. If you can imagine the kind of technology that is lined up against us right now that could cause exactly this kind of disaster. And we don't need a flood.
No, you don't. Do you remember the Bruce Willis movie, the Die Hard movies? I think it was the fourth one, Revenge of Bruce Willis or whatever it was, where the terrorists took over the Internet. Did you know that was actually based on a real disaster scenario with the Bruce Willisism thrown in?
It surprises me not. Does it surprise you?
It's a serious scenario. I mean, really, you know. But the point is this. I think people should also take some action, like right now. I mean, you know it. I've been speaking about emergency management. People are actually starting to pay attention. I mean, it helped to have an ice storm just a few months ago, but people have short memories until the next disaster. So it's not only to empower yourself, and your community, but you got to get on the backs of government and say, what up? You certainly have enough money to be giving corporations and foreign companies money to basically take the money and run, as in Ontario government. Anywhere else it would be called theft. Here it's called, trying to give money to corporations. So don't believe government when they say they don't have the money. They have the money. And unfortunately, some governments find it easier to litigate than to mitigate. Let them sue us. We'll keep them in court for 1,000 years, spend millions on the lawyers instead of on these programs. So you got to do something about that, because you're talking about your life and your community and your family and your home. This is not political activism. This is not religion. This is not ideology. This is survival. Period.
Yeah, big difference.
Well, and that's why more people need to get involved with local politics here, because that's where all this change needs to take place. And and speaking with you earlier there, like when we talk about provincial and federal, it's so corporatized, privatized, you name it. It's so broken, you can't fix it. And so we got to do it at local government levels here,
Well, I agree.
So, yeah, we need to get, people need to start connecting in their communities. And I'm doing it right now because we got our local elections coming up here. And I mean, as much as I would love to throw my hat into it, but I just don't have the time. We are finding the right people that need to get into these places that are aware of these issues. So people need to get out there and start finding these people and find out what they know, and we all got to help to educate and inform each other on what we need to do. And local government has all the power. They're trying to remove that through, and Dee and I talked about this on a prior show, through trade agreements here. And we got to start taking it back. We really, truly do, and start abstaining from a lot of these corporate laws that are coming into place here.
I agree. And
they do have a tendency to blockade people from doing this kind of activity. This is the kind of initiative, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but this is the kind of initiative that really is born at the municipal level and is carried out at the municipal level and ought to be carried out at every municipality. And as you and I have discussed, it would be a really good thing to have the CEPA, like the Community Emergency Preparedness Association, promoting the community emergency response teams to local communities everywhere, because all of these people have the ability, they have the skills. There's not a community in the planet that doesn't have skilled people at something.
Of course.
So there's always people who can help. But when you leave them high in the sky and they don't have an idea of what they should do or how to get organized or how to deal with anything, because they're sitting there, maybe the guy's an electrician, but he can't just go out there in the street and start helping people with their electricity. He's got no authority. But if he's a member of a CERT team, yes, he does.
Well,
yes, he does.
Yes, and that's where for people listening here that are in our Okanagan here, I just want to say that supporting locals will be working with John here on implementing this here, and we'd love to present this to our city council here, and at the same time to our meetings here, because irregardless what they do, I know what we're going to do. And it's like Dee just said, there's people skilled on every single level here. And so when pardon the language, when shit hits the fan here, we need, even if you got 1% of the population, like let's say here in our South Okanagan here, just 1% that have already met, we already know what we need to do. The water, the food. Another thing that we discussed here too, and I'd love to talk further on this on another show, is aquaponics. If you want to keep the food supply going without needing electricity, So we need to discuss all these things in order to prepare.
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because in the United States, the federal government subsidizes every CERT team that passes and is certified, as well as subsidies from the state and local governments. Here, in Toronto and Ontario, not only is it non-existent, but they seem to turn their nose up and get offended when an organization like mine, a registered charity, saying, "Hey, look, let's do this." So there's that, and there's also I want to get back to what you talked about, electing people. It's not just getting candidates that understand and want to do something about this, but voters, you better get off your butts and start getting serious about democracy. If you can take the time to read the Walmart flyer, then you can take the time to read the flyer of the candidates' positions and platform and make an informed decision, not just flick a vote and get back to the game or Oprah. Because you know what? One day you're going to wake up and your rights are going to be nada. And the only emergency preparedness then is how many we can stuff in a pen. So, it comes down, I mean, there's a civilization during a long drawn-out disaster will only sustain itself for a certain point of time, and then it unfortunately degrades into survival of the fittest. But when you implement programs like this that mitigate, shorten the disaster, speed up the recovery, keep the people calm, people are aware. Remember, what's the most important thing in a disaster? Okay, keep people informed regularly. Okay?
Yeah.
When you do that, people are comfortable, people are not fearful, people will listen, people will be organized.
You know what, John? On that exact note, okay, what we can all observe, even from our own experience watching the news, watching TV, excuse me, watching the reports of other disasters that have gone down here, there, and everywhere else, is that the people will respond positively to people who are calm.
Yes.
If you are calm, the people will respond to you with calm.
Well, it's not just calm,
people, Well, yeah, I know, but you've got to have the knowledge. But
I think human beings have an instinct to are aware of when people know what they're doing. I mean, everybody.
Exactly.
So, you're in a situation and some, male, female, or something in between is barking orders and it's making sense. People will listen and follow those orders.
Yes, they will. That's precisely my point.
And that's why, like, anybody listening to this show right now that thinks they don't have skills, they think they're not an electrician, they're not a plumber, they're not a farmer, they're not this. There is so much involved in keeping a community running.
Let me give you an example of exactly what you're talking about so people get the idea, okay? Now, for example, the mother of a family of 4 young children, may be an RN. Now, if she's an RN, obviously her skills are going to be valuable during an emergency, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Okay? Well, what if she has to take care of her 4 children and can't leave to help anyone else? Well, you know what? If you may be the lady next door who doesn't have any skills except for taking care of children, babysit the kids so the nurse can go help. There's your skill. It's a needed skill.
Okay, can I give you one that's even unskilled but vital? The ice storm. When we were talking about the assessment, one of the things I said that where we failed was, yes, there was downed trees and branches all over. Dee'll tell you this, the roads were impassable. So we only had so many hydro vehicles and forestry vehicles. They were dealing with the most serious, the things that fell on houses and buildings and stuff like that. So one of the problems was it took a very long time to clear the roads. So
exactly.
One of the things
why were they waiting? Why were they waiting? What's the matter with all these well-muscled people that they couldn't pull things to the side of the road?
Exactly. CERT teams would have been deployed, and what you do is one of the things you train them with CERT too is to utilize the resources of the community. So the CERT team would have gone into that particular community, knocked on some doors and said, is there any able-bodied people here? Yes. Could you please put on some coat and some gloves and help us clear the road so the emergency vehicles and utility vehicles have easy access? That would have saved days.
Yeah, but you know what this sounds like? It sounds like freaking kindergarten is what it sounds like to me. You know what I mean? It's like,
Well, 'cause so
holy
many
crap,
people-
this stuff should be going on without even thinking about it. That's what should be happening.
Well, too many
besides
people. Yeah, I know, but too many people think that, you know what? We pay for these services. I pay my
Yeah,
taxes.
right.
I get
Yeah.
off my ass and do it.
You
You know,
do pay
and
for
so,
these services, but the world has changed. It's not what it was. Now, here's an irony. Unfortunately, the supersize me, expect everything, and sorry, there's no app for this situation. But back in the 50s, and up until almost the 80s, actually, people were more prepared for disasters. Do you know why? Because during the Cold War Cuban crisis, it was drilled into the people's head. Bomb shelters, food supplies in the basements, duck and cover, all that stuff. So people actually had supplies, knew that when an emergency kicked in, turn on your portable radio, listen for instructions, but that's faded away.
very good point.
And now we don't have apps for this stuff. You've got to go back and learn to fend for yourself and your community until the emergency services can get to you. In a major disaster, that will definitely not be right away.
Well, the problem we got here, John, too, and I'm sure Dee will jump right in after I say this, is is the fact that they're privatizing all these sources that we have that were funded by our tax dollars. So now it's a for-profit system, you know. So they don't want you to be prepared. They want you to need them, kind of like big government wants. Big government only exists when there's poverty, you know. And so, God forbid if we could actually take care of ourselves, right?
Well, exactly. But now, and I've actually addressed this. I said, given in a time of global instability and concern about hostilities erupting, when governments do such a things against the population, the businesses, and the resources of the country, then we have to start raising the question of the T word, don't we? And the T word is treason.
Yes.
When you disempower your community and your country and your people, you don't hide behind the skirt of capitalism, which is not capitalism by political definition, is then known as fascism. You are a traitor. And you should not be in government.
Yeah.
You should not be in government.
Are you talking about, did you say Harper there? I didn't hear that.
I have not said anything. I just said that when the government...
Sorry, that was my inside voice speaking out again. I apologize.
Yeah, I got one too. Harper.
In Ontario, if you betray your community, you get a job at Harvard and a pension. Everyone else has to go to jail if they don't pay a parking ticket.
There you go. And look at, you know what? You want to see the height of the ridiculous? There are 17,000 families in the city of Detroit right now who have been living without running water for 3 months because they can't pay their water bills.
I know, and that's a disaster in the making and unfolding. But let me just get back to another issue. What's frightening, and governments do not want to discuss this, is, and Toronto has nuclear reactors nearby, but I'll tell you, that's small potatoes to what can happen with a biological outbreak because of the world rapid travel. I remember seeing scenarios where, patient zero was in Africa, and within hours, this virus was around the world. Okay?
Oh,
Do
they
people
know that.
what
They
to
use
do?
that all the time.
But it's a real scenario that can happen at any moment. Do people know what to do? Do you know that times like that it's better not to evacuate, but to stay home, stay indoors, and batten down the hatches?
Yep.
Now, if the city's becoming unlivable, how many people? Okay, in Okinawa, perfect example. You've got the forest fires. How many people have a bug-out kit or a evac kit? Basically a hockey bag or a duffel bag or a crate where you've got stuff prepared to evacuate your home, your documents, food, medicine, papers, anything you need. You grab this thing and you're out the door, you're gone. How many people have that? Very few.
I don't.
Right?
And I know better. And I know better.
And no, a debit card will not save you, right?
Well, let me ask you, John, do you?
What's that?
Do you?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Do you have a kit?
I do actually. I actually do. I have actually a few of them spread around here. Some of them are the old Canadian, those Mastercraft toolboxes. Some of them are plastic totes. I do. I actually spread around. I've got cans of big, huge, honking cans of food. I usually have bottled water, including the big ones. I did okay in the blackout of 2003. I could flush my toilet from the 12th floor, you know?
Well, and that's why we got to prepare a little bit more than that, and again, that's something for people that are here in our Okanagan, particularly right now in our South Okanagan, which is where I'm located. With the meetings that we host, we talk about these issues, and you need to have a common place where everybody meets, and that's what you need to do. A lot of your storing, canning, preserving, teaching, everything else like that, and again, like. These alternative energies, the gasification units are big in this event because, I mean, for the most part, people don't know how to store food without having a refrigerator or a freezer. And I got to tell you, yeah, so how do you do it? And this is, again, where we and it, you know, in a way, a lot of what's happening in our world today, you know, you got to, the one thing when I did my door-to-door, they said, find 3 positives out of every negative. And I got to admit, when I was in Toronto and it was minus 40 and it was a blizzard and I couldn't see the next house, it was very hard. But the positives out of what's happening in our world today is because of all this technology and us being disconnected and thinking that everything is on your Google search engine, we have forgotten how to reconnect with our community here. You know, and so we need to go back to that part, man. Like the answers are right there in your community. So we got to reconnect, and we got to start doing it now. Like we got tools like what we're doing right now with internet radio, with locals supporting locals, Awake Radio, Liberty Beacon. I mean, there's so much out there to help educate us on where we're at right now and what to do. And people need to start doing that and get off those reality shows. My God, people are living vicariously through all these reality shows between Duck Dynasty and Real Housewives.
I can't watch those. I go into convulsions and have weird growth on me. Disgusting. Now, can I ask you a question?
Especially when it comes out that these are actors, you know, and people are still like, oh, I still like the show anyways, and it's just like, what? But it's not real, you know. And so, again, this is happening for a reason. This is happening for us to reconnect as human beings on this planet and reconnect back to Mother Earth here because we're way too disconnected. And if this corporatization, like you said, which is fascism, continues, this is not going to be a world we are going to recognize very soon. I don't even recognize Canada anymore.
Well, Harper promised that, didn't he?
Yeah. We were number one for so many.
Well, then again, hold on a minute. Who do you blame? Those that did it or those that let them do it?
Yeah, well, it's always those that let anybody do it. But the bottom line is he's the one came out and said that. And prior to that, things were going along relatively smoothly in terms of, yeah, there was that level of corruption, but you could still recognize Canada. And what he said was, when he was done with Canada, you wouldn't recognize it, and already I don't.
Well, then again, that's why he won with 35% of the vote, and the 65% who didn't vote should stick their head in the ground and be ashamed of themselves. But let's get back to the perspective. So let's say, and one of the, and I want to talk to it because I know the time's running out, and I want to bring this up because it's the most important, other than making sure you don't have broken bones or, you know, lacerations and that. When everything's said and done, and it's scary, and Dee, you know this, it's about fresh water, okay?
Uh-huh.
One of the most important things. And yet, if I asked you right now, how many different methods are you aware of to purify water, what do you think people will say? Oh, you mean I have to purify water? Yeah, when your bottled water runs out, and you have no power for the municipal water system to operate, and this is where rural areas are lucky because they got their, you know, and if you got a well, you sure as hell should make sure you have a hand pump beside the electric pump. What are you going to do about purifying water when it becomes contaminated? How many people know that?
Yeah.
Imagine a city with after a week or two with no water, and then the bottled water runs out, and there's no supplies coming in. Yeah, there's lots of water around, but
exactly. What is Detroit doing for its third month in a row with 17,000 families with no water? What is Detroit doing?
That's a social disaster coming, you know. I know that there's some people from Windsor and some organizations that are actually shipping water across the bridge every day. But it just goes to show you, I mean, you know, how we prioritize our quote-unquote civilizations. But, you know, and I know it's time to wrap this up, but look, it's important to educate yourself. Now, out in the federal government has a website. It's, I'll be straight up, it's a little lame, but, you know, there's something to it. And it's called getprepared.gc.ca. Okay, it's Government of Canada Emergency Preparedness. At least it's a start. The others is provincial governments all have emergency management websites. And I believe one of the better ones is your local municipal government. Depending on the size of your city or municipality, they will actually have an emergency management office, or the fire chief or one of the fire chief deputies will be an emergency manager. Either way, there's no excuse for not having that information. Once we're up and able to, we're going to have a website up. We're going to have deploying these programs. One of the things I actually, as of a few days ago, I started speaking to some of the veterans. And I'm talking about more recent in Afghanistan, etc. I think the guys from World War II would have a bit of a rough go of it. But I've said, look, you guys come with some serious training already. You live all over the country. You guys would be a natural to become CERT captains because each CERT team would have a commander or a captain. It is a hierarchy. It is a structured organization. We're doing it a little different from the Americans because of the resources. We do have a charity number, and we're prepared to work with all the different chapters. I mean, obviously, you know, the chapters do their thing in their own community, and we encourage them to get involved in the community all the time. In some cities now, certain teams are being asked to come out to do parades, community events, you know, sporting events. So, like, you're always out there, and the CERT teams are also an important role because they take part in educating their community.
Yes, and so they can go into schools. They can go into schools and educate kids, because one thing that has to be discussed, too, is what happens if your children are at school while there's a disaster and you can't get to them?
Well, they'll tell you that school boards. Well, they'll tell you that school boards have a plan, an evac plan, or a stay and deploy plan. But again, if you don't know this plan, how many parents actually know what the emergency plan of their school is?
Almost none of them. This is why they have panic and chaos. If the panic and chaos is not in the school, it's outside the school with the parents.
Exactly. So you have the Teen CERT program, but in Ontario, the provincial government actually started doing this. Indeed, I remember we were talking about this. They have presentation programs, but what we would like to do is create a textbook on this.
Exactly.
So that, so if you go into school.
DVD and a supportive DVD.
That pads and transporters and everything else.
Yeah, well, we like that too, and I'd like a phaser for myself, please, but, you know, I know that isn't happening this week.
Okay, so either way, it's important to educate, and you know, this is the most laid back about it. I've heard all sorts of wonderful stories in the U.S. about the Teen CERTs, and they're rather innovative, some of these guys, right? So it's just a matter of educating, understanding, get off your butts, see what's going on in your community, learn and do it. And organizations and media such as yourselves is a great thing. And that's why when we talked earlier and we said that, you know, technology also levels the playing field a little bit because now the light side, if you would, has access to the world just like others do.
Exactly.
A little biased there, sorry.
One thing I wanted to throw out very quickly is the idea of, you know, the unification of these CERT teams. You're talking about some of these guys being pretty innovative. Do they have any way of interacting with each other so they can share these innovations? Because they should.
They have CERP websites in the United States. We are registered with them. We're basically the CERT guys up in Canada. There is blogs, there is LinkedIn, there's so much out there. One of the interesting things is listening and talking to emergency management personnel, responders, and planners from around the world, because it's amazing what they'll think of because they've had to deal with it that you haven't yet. So the exchange of knowledge and information is amazing what you can learn. So again, that's why I always go back to saying you got no one to blame yourself if you don't deal with it.
Okay.
Exactly,
Okay,
which is why the name of the show is Locals, Supporting Locals. That's what it's all about.
Okay, John, before we got to close up the show here, like Locals Supporting Locals would like to be one of these contributors and work with SEPA here. So for our listeners that are in our Okanagan here, where can we go from here? What can we tell our listeners here so that they can be a little bit at ease here? Because I definitely want to be a part of this. We're already doing it, but I think it's important to connect with an organization such as yours.
Yeah, I think you've got to formalize it, and I think this is an ideal way of doing it. And let's not forget, people, because our, our radio show audience goes around the world. Let's not forget that SEPA is an internationally capable organization. So wherever you are on this planet, getting a hold of this particular group headed by John Papadakis, and, discussing how to formulate and set up a CERT team in your own community wherever you are is a positive thing. So let's not limit it to the Okanagan. We all need it.
Of course not. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Of course not. So,
we're basically right now, we're bare bones. We do have a registered charity number, so we would be very happy to take donations. We do have an email. Our website is under construction. We're basically going it alone. We've had no support from government. So I'll give you the two emails. The charity's email is CEPA, CEPA .Canada, CANADA, @hotmail.com. I will also give you my direct email, which is John Papadakis @live.com, JOHNPAPADAKIS @live, LIVE.com. And my contact number is 647-979-4141.
good for you, John. It's great to see somebody out there that actually is applying themselves, because God only knows how many people will end up calling you right now. And
Well, I have a campaign team meeting after this, but one of my election platforms is that through the City of Toronto, I'm actually going to implement the CERT teams. I'm going to teach my ward, 29 in Toronto, Danforth. I'm going to teach them to empower themselves. We're going to identify all the hazards, and we're going to show them how to do this properly. And if the...
God, man. I finally made it. I got away. I got away from the tyrannical government. I got away from the austerity measures. I got away from all the criminality and the corruption. I found a place. I found a place in serenity. Away from the madness. I found a place. I have my bug-out bag and my things nestled in this little mountain hideaway with wildlife all around me. And I have an AM radio I'm going to switch on.
You're listening to awakeradio.co.uk.
Oh, wow. I still have Awake Radio.
awakeradio.us.
I still have the truth
and shazizradio.com.
at my fingertips. And I'm nestled away.
Awake Radio.
Tune
Straight
in
talk for the
to
awake
Radio.
and the aware.
Yeah, and we're back with Local Supporting Local, the Heartbeat of the Okanagan here, and we're just about to wrap up the show here because John Papadakis is running for council here in Toronto. It is Toronto, right?
He has stuff to do.
Yes,
He's in Ward 29, Toronto Danforth, in the city of Toronto, and let me tell you, there is a little burgeoning movement coming around in terms of common sense at council. And one of the things that I have noticed, and I've known about John, I've known this guy like, how long, John, 27 years?
I'm coming on for 30, actually.
Yeah, probably. Oh, shut up.
Okay, 29, sorry.
Shut up. Oh,
29,
God.
I forgot.
Yeah, well, like back to like 1985, I think. But essentially what we're talking about is somebody who's always presented a little bit of common sense in place of government lunacy. And it's now at the point where no matter which government you look at, no matter what country, what city, what town, whatever, you're going to find government lunacy. And the only thing, as you were saying earlier, John, the only thing that allows lunacy to govern sanity is that sanity sits down and does nothing.
Well, exactly. And somebody, I can't remember which quote that was, that the definition of evil is when good men let evil do onto the earth.
Evil thrives when good men do nothing.
That's
It goes back, I think, to Edmund Burke.
Okay, well, I gave you the abridged.
Yeah, well, I mean, we all know it. We all know it. But how many of us actually abide by it?
Agreed.
So
Yeah.
that's where our problem is. And this is where, individuals will sit in their house, and John, you and I have discussed this on numerous occasions. Individual citizens feel powerless. But in groups, there is power. Come together, and there is power. Work together, there is power. Hence the idea of local supporting locals, hence the idea of community emergency response teams, hence the idea of know your neighbor because your neighbor could save your butt one day and vice versa.
Absolutely.
So, this is a massive idea coming together from two different angles. And you got to like that.
Yeah,
you got to like that.
Yeah, so in closing here, or before we close, we'll have some comments here from John and Dee here. But just so people know that are listening here in our Okanagan, Local Supporting Locals will be working with SEPA on what we need to do in order to connect with the rest of Canada and internationally here. And you are more than welcome to contact Local Supporting Locals.ca. All our information is on that. And we'd like to host a meeting where, John, you can join us on Skype, or you can join us on a conference call, whatever it may be, so we can discuss, everything that you're doing here, because this is a registered charity at the same token here, so.
You can look it up under the Canada Revenue Agency. We're there, registered, the whole bit.
Yeah, so people get active in your communities here. It's a lot of work, yes, but the way the Local Supporting Local was developed was through a calendar. The purpose of the calendar is to help fund your organization, help the printing of the calendar, but at the same token, to be able to do things such as connecting with John here, so that we get reconnected back in our community, because we're not trying to create anything new. We're trying to remind us of the way it used to be.
Well, not only that, this is just basic survival and common sense. I mean, if we can't get that message across, then I guess Darwin and natural selection will do their thing,
Yeah, well, it's time to put your head between your knees. Put your head between the knees and kiss your butt goodbye.
Exactly.
Take responsibility for yourself and your family, period.
No kidding. I think that's that's a better option than putting your head between your knees.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the problem. There's too many factions of government that were apparently created for these things so you don't have to worry about it. That's where your tax dollars goes. And actually, at one point, it was actually doing that. But now it's all getting privatized, yet our taxes keep going up, and all these services are being taken away. I mean, just something for people to look at. Go look at how many garbage cans you actually have in your community today that used to get picked up and blah, blah, blah. That's been removed. Did your taxes go down? Nope. So anyway,
well, I think the question should be asked is, why is it that governments around the world are waking up to this issue and addressing it, and the governments in Canada, province, and the municipalities are asleep at the switch?
Yeah,
Okay,
there's no dead man switch on this thing either.
Anyways, guys, I'm going to have to go. I'm getting all sorts of nasty emails from my campaign team.
Okay, give us some closing comments here, John. What's your website?
Be prepared. Be aware. Well, you see, we don't have it yet. It's CEPA. I believe it's called CEPAcanada.ca, but it's not up and running yet. We're, like I said, we're hurting for resources. Fortunately, we're not, sports teams and et cetera, that gets $500,000 for doing nothing.
So what can we do to help you? What can we?
We need fundraising, we need money, we need resources, we need technology, we need people that are willing to get out there and be trained and get the word out there and set up the different detachments or chapters, whatever you want to call them.
So here in the Okanagan, we're already ready to jump on board. So
you need a flagship, John.
Okay,
you need
sorry.
A flagship.
Okay,
you know?
Well, exactly. Yes, sir. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So how would anybody here, let's say, for example, here in the Okanagan, that wanted to contribute to help you get to where you need to be, what would they have to do? How would they get in touch with you?
Well, I don't know if I guess I was giving my information out when we got cut off.
You gave it, yeah. Well, we got your email. The email is cepa.canada@hotmail.com. That's CEPA.canada@hotmail.com, or John, John Papadakis, Papadakis @live.com.
Yeah, and then phone number, I'll give you my number. It's 647-979-4141.
Okay, so folks,
you know what? Let me give you the office number too. It's 647-349-7288.
Okay, so folks that are listening here, anybody that can help to contribute to this, like this is the real McCoy here. What's the website so that people can know that you are legit?
Well, how about you give them your campaign
Canada
website.
Revenue Agency charities. Sorry?
Yes, you're registered. You're registered with the Canada Revenue Agency. Yes, but how about you give people your campaign website?
There you go. You got my vote. I'm moving to Toronto.
Oh, thanks. I believe it's johnpapadakis.ca, and thanks for the vote.
That's what it is. That's what it is. John Papadakis .ca is the website, and there is going to be, if not yet, there's going to be some information with regard to the community emergency response teams as it reflects as part of John's platform for the City of Toronto, which is the exemplar, essentially, for all of the CEPA and CERT applications worldwide, would it not be?
Well, again, they would have to adapt to the different countries' needs.
Well, yeah, obviously. I mean, there's different, but essentially, you're going to localize whatever it is because, a prairie community has different challenges than a mountainous community. So
absolutely.
Clearly,
so the principles are the same.
Yes, and you've got population variances and access routes and proximity to other major cities and likelihood of this disaster. I mean, all kinds of variables coming out our butts. But the bottom line is there's one thing we all share in common, and that is wherever people gather, there are skills, because everybody's good at something, and everybody can do something to help other people, even, like I said, even if all you can do is babysit, well, how about you free up the parents of those kids so they can go help?
Absolutely.
If they don't,
Guys,
if they're not freed up, they are not going to leave their children.
Exactly. Listen, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on such an important matter. I do have to go because I'm now getting bombarded by my handlers, and I know that sounds kind of strange, but that's what they are.
Oh, has Liz got her licking stick out?
Oh, it's not just Liz, it's the whole crew.
Oh, well, no licking stick, no trouble.
Actually, I'm going to be with Mayor Ford on Friday at a big event, and we have to do some preparations. And yes, I am supporting Mayor Ford.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
All right, my dears.
All right. Thank you very much. I wish everybody a good night, good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you are.
Yeah, and you and I will speak soon, John.
Okay, and thank you for having me, and I look forward to working with you guys out there.
It's going to be fun.
Okay. Yeah, we look forward to working with you as well. John, if you, I know you're very busy. If you could just hang on after the show here, our host from Awake Radio just wants to speak to you for 2 seconds. That would be awesome. And so in our wrap-up here, okay, the message of locals supporting locals. We got to reconnect as a community. We got a lot of things coming down the pipelines. Pardon the pun on that one. Yes.
Yeah, I hear that's an issue.
Yeah, no kidding. Frack you. Was that my outside voice?
No, that was Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah. So anyways, visit us at localsupportinglocals.ca. Localsradio.com has all of our archives here, and we just got to reconnect, folks. And by all means, my phone number is on the website. Give me a call. We have a meeting coming up this Sunday. We have meetings regularly with farmers, engineers, all walks of life here. And by all means, just send us a message, and we'd love to include you. So thank you very much and for joining us tonight. Thank you, Dee Nicholson. Thank you, John Papadakis, for joining us.
And thank you for having me. And I look forward to moving forward on this.
Oh, yeah, we're going to have a lot.
And listen, by the way, when I get elected, you guys are invited to come over to the city of Toronto for a soft drink.
I look forward to it, John. I hope this show puts you right on, helps.
Yeah, as long as it's not Toronto on tap, John.
No. We're going to be a little, so we'll be careful about that one.
Yeah, I think you better. All right.
All right,
okay, bye-bye. I'll hold on. Okay, I'll hold on.
Good night, folks. Have a good night.
Night.